Throwaway because she knows my main, and honestly I'm not ready for that level of chaos yet. I'm a 34M, my wife is 32F, been together almost 9 years, married for 5. No kids, 2 cats, 1 shared Netflix account that somehow became the battleground for all of this. Up until a few months ago, I would have described our marriage as normal. Not Instagram perfect, not toxic, just normal. Arguments about dishes, money stress, occasional dry spells. The usual married people stuff. Looking back now, that's probably the first red flag. Everything felt too normal, like she was clocking out early from the relationship. Less talking. More scrolling. Phone always face down. New work friends I'd never met. She started calling me dramatic anytime I asked simple questions like, "Hey, who are you texting at 11:47 p.m.? She also suddenly became very into finding herself. New clothes. New perfume. Gym membership she never used but had to keep. She'd disappear for hours and come back irritated, like I'd inconvenienced her just by existing in my own house. I ignored it. Of course I did. Because I trusted her. Because I didn't want to be that guy. Because when you've built a life with someone, your brain will bend over backwards to protect the idea that you didn't marry a liar. Spoiler alert, I did. At the time though, I genuinely believed we were just in a rough patch. I told myself every marriage has seasons. I had no idea I was standing at the edge of a cliff, smiling, while she was already halfway down, holding someone else's hand. That realization wouldn't hit until a random Tuesday night, a dead phone battery, and one notification that wasn't meant for me to see. Before anyone says, "You should have seen it coming," yeah, I know. Trust me, my brain has been replaying this highlight reel on a loop like it's trying to torture me into enlightenment. The lying didn't start big. It never does. It was stupid stuff. Harmless on-paper stuff. She'd say she was working late, but her laptop would still be cold when she got home. She claimed her phone battery sucked now, which is why she never answered texts, yet somehow it survived 6-hour Instagram marathons. She told me she'd already eaten dinner with coworkers, then got annoyed when I didn't cook for her, like I was supposed to magically know which version of reality we were in that night. And her attitude. Jesus. Every question turned into a fight. Why do you care? Why are you interrogating me? Not everything is about you. That last one became her favorite. Any concern I raised got flipped into me being controlling, insecure, or emotionally exhausting. At one point she actually said, "You're making me feel trapped." That one stuck with me because I remember thinking, trapped by what? A husband who does laundry and asks how your day was? The physical distance crept in too. Less touching. No casual kisses. Sex became rare and weird. Mechanical. Like she was mentally somewhere else, just waiting for it to be over so she could get back to her phone. I tried to fix things. God, did I try? I suggested date nights, therapy, weekend trips. She shot all of it down. We're fine. You're overthinking. Can you stop making everything so heavy? So I stopped asking. I stopped pushing. I convinced myself that backing off was the mature thing to do. That giving her space would somehow bring her closer. Instead, it just gave her more room to lie. At this point, I still didn't know. But something in my gut had started screaming, and I was actively choosing not to listen. I told myself paranoia ruins marriages. I didn't realize silence does it faster. Then came the night my phone died, and hers didn't. It was a stupid night. Nothing dramatic. No big argument. Just one of those quiet evenings where you realize you and your spouse are basically roommates who share a bed and avoid eye contact. My phone died around 10 p.m. I didn't bother charging it because, honestly, who was I expecting to text me? She was sitting on the couch next to me, scrolling, half smiling at her screen like it was telling her inside jokes I wasn't allowed to hear. She got up to shower and left her phone face up on the coffee table. I didn't go snooping. I swear on whatever you want. I wasn't rummaging. I wasn't planning anything. I was literally just staring at the ceiling, thinking about how weirdly lonely marriage can feel, when her phone lit up. One notification. Big font. No subtlety. I miss your body already. No name saved. Just a number. I remember my chest doing this awful drop, like when an elevator freefalls for half a second. My brain immediately tried to save me. Probably spam. Wrong number. Inside joke from a friend. Then another message came through. Next time I won't let you leave so early. Yeah. No spam service is that poetic. My hands started shaking before my brain even caught up. I could hear the shower running, could picture her in there humming like she hadn't just detonated my entire life from 3 feet away. I picked up the phone. That felt like crossing a moral line, but at that point morality was a luxury item I could no longer afford. The thread was already open. Weeks of messages. Flirting. Explicit stuff. Plans. Inside jokes. Photos I will never unsee. Voice notes. Her calling him things she hadn't called me in years. And the timestamps. While I was at work. While I was asleep. While I was in the other room. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even feel angry yet. I just felt stupid. Like I'd been the punchline to a joke everyone else was in on. The shower turned off. I had about 30 seconds to decide who I was going to be next. The calm husband, the screaming mess, or the idiot who pretends he didn't see anything. Turns out, I didn't really get to choose. She walked out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, hair dripping, humming like a psychopath in a horror movie who doesn't know the killer's already in the house. She froze when she saw me holding her phone. Just stopped. Like her brain blue-screened. "What are you doing?" she snapped immediately. Not confused. Not scared. Angry. That was the first thing that really hit me. I asked her whose number it was. She laughed. Actually laughed. This short, dismissive little sound, and said, "Are you seriously going through my phone now?" Classic move. Straight to offense. I told her what I saw. I repeated the message word for word. Watched her face carefully. No shock. No denial at first. Just annoyance, like I'd caught her jaywalking, not detonating our marriage. Then the lies started coming fast. Rapid fire. Like she'd rehearsed. "It's just flirting. It's not what it looks like. You're taking it out of context. I didn't think you'd ever see that." She tried to grab the phone back. I pulled it away, and that's when she really lost it. She accused me of invading her privacy. Of being controlling. Of pushing her away, emotionally. Apparently this was all my fault because I'd been checked out, and she needed attention. I asked her if she slept with him. She rolled her eyes. "Why does it always have to be so dramatic with you?" That wasn't a no. When I pressed harder, she finally said, "It only happened once." Which I later learned is cheater speak for way more than once, but I'm testing the damage. The towel slipped a bit as she paced around the living room, ranting about how unhappy she'd been, how lonely she felt, how I never listened. Meanwhile, my brain was still stuck on timestamps and places and the realization that while I was planning our future, she was actively shopping for my replacement. At some point she said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." I remember thinking, that's funny, because you sure put a lot of effort into it. By the end of the argument, I was emotionally numb, she was defensive and cold, and somehow I was the one apologizing just to make the yelling stop. That's when I knew, really knew, that whatever we had before was already dead. I just hadn't buried it yet. After the confrontation fizzled out, not resolved, not even close, she went to bed like it was any other night. No tears. No panic. Just a sharp, "I'm done talking about this," and then she closed the bedroom door in my face. I slept on the couch. Or at least, I laid there staring at the ceiling until sunrise, replaying every moment of the last few months like my brain was desperately trying to retroactively warn me. That's when the shock really kicked in. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. No sobbing on the floor. No punching walls. Just this hollow, vibrating feeling in my chest, like my insides had been scooped out and replaced with static. I kept checking my hands to see if they were shaking. They weren't. I almost wished they were. At least that would have meant I was reacting correctly. Around 3 a.m., I opened my laptop and did the most humiliating thing imaginable. I Googled, what to do when your wife cheats. As if there's some step-by-step guide that ends with, and then everything is fine. Every article said the same thing. Breathe, don't make rash decisions, communicate. Meanwhile, my wife was probably texting him from our bed. That thought finally broke something. I felt this sudden surge of anger so sharp it scared me. Not explosive, controlled, cold. The kind that makes you realize you've been disrespected in a way that can't be undone. By morning, she acted normal. Too normal. She made coffee. Asked if I wanted eggs. Told me she had a lot to think about and needed space. Space. From the man she cheated on. I went to work in a fog, reread the messages on my lunch break like I was punishing myself, and started noticing all the lies lining up perfectly. The late nights. The weekends she needed alone time. The new underwear I thought was for me. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was grieving. Not just the marriage, but the version of her I thought I knew. And the worst part? I still loved her. That realization hit harder than the betrayal itself. The next few days were brutal in this quiet, insidious way. No screaming. No big scenes. Just two people existing in the same house, pretending the air wasn't poisoned. She oscillated between guilt and cruelty like it was a personality trait. One minute she'd sigh dramatically and say things like, "I know I messed up, okay?" The next, she'd snap at me for leaving a glass in the sink or accuse me of punishing her by being distant. I asked if she was still talking to him. She said no. Immediately. Too fast. Then I noticed she started taking her phone into the bathroom again. Locking it. Putting it on Do Not Disturb at night. She even changed her passcode, didn't tell me, didn't have to. The message was loud enough. Every lie chipped away at something inside me. I'd always believed trust, once broken, could be rebuilt if both people wanted it badly enough. What no one tells you is how exhausting it is to want that alone. I kept swinging between extremes. 1 hour I'd be mentally drafting speeches about reconciliation, therapy, starting over. The next, I'd feel this surge of disgust, not just at her, but at myself for even considering staying. There was one moment that really crystallized it. I told her I was struggling, that I felt humiliated, that I didn't know how to look at her without seeing those messages. She stared at me, arms crossed, and said, "I can't be responsible for your feelings forever." Forever. It had been 4 days. That's when it hit me, she wasn't remorseful. She was inconvenienced. I was standing there bleeding emotionally, and she was annoyed that I was getting it on the carpet. That night, lying on the couch again, I realized love without respect isn't love, it's dependency. And I'd been confusing the two for way too long. Still, knowing something logically and accepting it emotionally are two very different beasts. And mine wasn't done tearing me apart yet. By day 5, her story started changing. Little inconsistencies at first. The kind you'd miss if you weren't already hyper-aware. She said they'd stopped talking weeks ago. Then later, she said it was only recently. She claimed it was purely physical, then called him just someone who understood her. She couldn't keep the narrative straight, and every time I caught it, she'd sigh like I was being difficult. I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. Who is he? She hesitated. That alone was an answer. Eventually she told me his first name. A co-worker. Of course it was. Someone she'd told me not to worry about, because he was kind of pathetic, and definitely not her type. Apparently, her type was now liar with availability. I asked how long it had been going on. "Why does it matter?" she said. That's when I knew the truth was worse than whatever number she was willing to admit. After more pushing, she landed on a couple of months. The messages said otherwise. I didn't even bother calling her on it anymore. Arguing facts with someone committed to fiction is a losing game. What really broke me wasn't the sex, or even the emotional intimacy, it was how casually she erased me from the story. She talked about sneaking around like it was a minor inconvenience. Like I was just an obstacle, not a human being. At one point she said, "I never planned for you to find out." I don't think she realized how damning that sentence was. Not "I regret it." Not "I wish I hadn't done this." Just, poor planning. That night, I went for a drive with no destination. Just me, the dark, and this growing clarity that I'd been trying to salvage something that didn't exist anymore. I wasn't married to the woman in front of me. I was married to a memory. And memories don't lie to your face and ask you to be understanding about it. I wish I could say there was some dramatic moment where I stood up for myself, packed a bag, and walked out with dignity. There wasn't. Rock bottom for me looked a lot quieter. Pathetic, even. It was 2 a.m. I was on the couch again. She was in the bedroom. I could hear her laughing softly, actually laughing, through the door. Not at a show. Not at a podcast. At him. I didn't knock. I didn't yell. I just sat there staring at the dark TV screen, watching my own reflection look smaller than I remembered. Something in me finally snapped, not in an angry way, but in a tired, bone-deep way. I realized I was competing with someone who didn't have to pay bills with her, didn't have to see her flaws, didn't have to clean up after the mess she made. He got the fun version. I got the aftermath. And worse. She let me. I opened my laptop and started reading old messages between us. Our early years. Inside jokes. Plans. I can't wait to grow old with you. All that stupid, hopeful crap. I felt like an archaeologist digging through the ruins of a life that had already ended. At some point, she came out to get water. She saw me there and said, annoyed, "Are you seriously still awake?" Still awake. Like grief runs on a schedule. That's when I finally cried. Not loudly. Just this silent, shaking breakdown where your body gives up before your pride does. I wasn't crying because she cheated anymore. I was crying because I'd stayed too long in a place where I wasn't wanted. Rock bottom didn't come with closure. It came with clarity. And clarity is terrifying, because once you see things clearly, you can't pretend anymore. Even if pretending is easier. The next morning, something felt different. Not better, just quieter. Like the emotional storm had burned itself out and left this heavy, still air behind. She was at the kitchen table on her phone when I walked in. Didn't look up. Didn't say good morning. I stood there for a second, waiting for, I don't know, remorse, shame, something human. Nothing. So I said it. My voice didn't shake, which surprised me. I can't do this anymore. She finally looked up, annoyed again, like I'd interrupted her train of thought. Do what? This. Us. The lying. The disrespect. The constant feeling that I was optional in my own marriage. I told her I felt stupid staying while she clearly wasn't choosing me. Her response? Well, I didn't ask you to. That sentence landed harder than any insult she'd thrown so far. Because it was honest. Cruel, but honest. She accused me of giving up too easily. Said I was being dramatic. Said marriages aren't fairy tales and that people make mistakes. Funny how her mistakes had a name, a phone, and a bedroom I wasn't allowed in. I told her I wanted to separate. Not divorce, yet, but space. Real space. Not the kind where she sleeps with someone else and I pretend it's self-growth. She scoffed. Told me I'd regret it. Said I'd never find someone who put up with me like she did. And for a split second, that fear worked. Years of self-doubt she'd subtly planted tried to flare up one last time. But then I remembered how small I'd felt on that couch. How invisible. How replaceable. I packed a bag. She didn't stop me. Didn't cry. Didn't apologize. She just went back to her phone. As I closed the door behind me, I felt this weird mix of devastation and relief, like amputating something infected. Painful, but necessary. I didn't know what came next. I just knew I couldn't stay. I crashed at a friend's place the first night. Slept on an air mattress that hissed every time I moved, but it was still the best sleep I'd had in weeks. No lies humming in the background. No phone lighting up with secrets. The quiet was loud. My brain kept reaching for my phone out of habit, like she might text me something that would magically fix everything. She didn't. Of course she didn't. The first few days were rough in this very unglamorous way. Forgetting I wasn't home anymore. Reaching for my wedding ring before remembering I'd taken it off and left it on the nightstand like a bad omen. Eating whatever was around because cooking for one felt depressing. But slowly, something shifted. I started noticing how tense I'd been for months. How much of my energy had gone into monitoring moods, choosing words carefully, trying not to trigger another accusation of being too much. Without her around, my shoulders dropped. I could breathe. She texted a few times. Nothing apologetic. Just logistical stuff. Bills. Mail. The cats. Once she threw in a casual, "I hope you're not making this harder than it needs to be." I didn't respond. That felt powerful in a way I hadn't expected. Not engaging. Not defending myself. Just choosing silence. At night, the sadness still hit hard. Grief doesn't disappear just because you did the right thing. I missed the idea of her. The plans. The person I thought she was. I mourned a future that now belonged to someone else. But beneath all that hurt, there was something new growing. Self-respect. Fragile but real. For the first time since discovering the affair, I wasn't asking, why wasn't I enough? I was asking, why did I accept so little? And that question changed everything. Everyone talks about anger like it comes first. For me, it showed up late, like it got stuck in traffic and then kicked the door in once it arrived. It hit one afternoon while I was folding laundry at my friend's place. Just standing there with socks that weren't even mine, when this wave of rage rolled through me so fast I had to sit down. I wasn't angry about the affair anymore. I was angry about the audacity. The way she lied so easily. The way she made me feel crazy for noticing obvious changes. The way she rewrote history to make herself the victim and me the problem. I replayed all those moments where I'd apologized just to keep the peace, and suddenly I saw them for what they were, training. I realized how often I'd shrunk myself to make her comfortable. How many times I'd swallowed my feelings because she couldn't handle being wrong. How normal it had felt to put my needs last, until I was completely erased. I almost texted her. Almost sent a long message detailing every single thing she'd done wrong, every lie, every manipulative sentence. I wanted her to know that I knew. But then I stopped. Because I finally understood something. She didn't need to understand my pain for it to be valid. And I didn't need her acknowledgement to move on. That realization didn't erase the anger, but it redirected it. Away from self-blame. Away from rumination. Toward boundaries. I wasn't angry because I'd lost her. I was angry because I'd lost myself trying to keep her. And I wasn't going to let that happen again. Acceptance is sold as this calm, enlightened state where you sip coffee and feel wise about suffering. That's a lie. For me, acceptance looked like waking up and not immediately checking my phone to see if she'd changed her mind. It looked like realizing I hadn't thought about her for a full 10 minutes, and then feeling guilty about that. It looked like sadness without panic. I started therapy around this time. First session, the therapist asked me why I stayed as long as I did. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. Because the answer wasn't flattering. It wasn't loyalty or love or commitment. It was fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of being alone. Fear that this was the best I'd ever get. Saying that out loud felt humiliating, but also freeing. I stopped romanticizing the past. When my brain tried to replay the good times, I forced myself to remember the full picture, the dismissiveness, the gaslighting, the way she looked bored while I was breaking down in front of her. Acceptance wasn't forgiving her. It was accepting that she was never going to be the person I needed her to be. And that staying wouldn't magically turn her into that person. One night, I realized something quietly profound. I wasn't waiting for her anymore. No anger spike. No sadness wave. Just done. That's when I knew I was actually moving forward, not because it hurt less, but because it finally hurt honestly, without denial cushioning the blow. And honest pain heals faster than false hope ever does. Just when things started to feel steady, she reached out again. Of course she did. They always do once they realize you're not orbiting them anymore. Her message was long, carefully worded, full of reflection and growth. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking. Said she missed me. Said the affair wasn't what she thought it would be. Funny how clarity shows up only after consequences do. We met for coffee. Public place. Neutral ground. I wasn't nervous, just curious. She looked different. Not better. Just less sure. The confidence she used to weaponize was cracked around the edges. She told me she felt lost. That she'd made a mistake. That she didn't want our marriage to end like this. I listened. Really listened. And for the first time, I noticed what wasn't there. No real apology. No ownership. Just a lot of passive language. Things happened. I got confused. We both made choices. I asked if she was still seeing him. She hesitated. That was all I needed. I told her I wasn't angry anymore. That I didn't hate her. But that I also didn't trust her. And without trust, love doesn't stand a chance. She cried then. Real tears. Not for me. For herself. For the loss of stability. For the ending she didn't get to control. When we stood up to leave, she said, I thought you'd fight harder. I looked at her and said, I did. You just didn't notice. I walked away feeling sad, but not shattered. Because this time, the ending was mine. Life didn't magically get better after that conversation. It just got lighter. Like I'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks and finally set it down. I moved into my own place. Small. Quiet. No memories in the walls yet. At first that felt lonely. Then it started to feel peaceful. I learned things about myself I'd ignored for years. That I'm not too sensitive. I'm just someone who actually feels things. That wanting honesty isn't insecurity, it's a baseline requirement. That love isn't supposed to feel like auditioning for your own spouse. Some nights were still rough. Grief doesn't run on a schedule. Certain songs, certain smells, random moments in the grocery store would still hit me sideways. Healing isn't linear. Anyone who tells you it is lying or selling something. But I stopped blaming myself for her choices. I stopped wondering what I could have done differently. Because the truth is simple and ugly and freeing all at once. People cheat because they want to, not because you failed them. I left behind the version of myself who begged for basic respect. The guy who thought endurance was the same thing as commitment. The husband who ignored his gut because trusting himself felt scarier than being wrong. What I took with me was harder to earn, but worth it. Boundaries. Self-respect. And the understanding that walking away isn't weakness. Sometimes it's survival. If you'd told me a year ago that my marriage would end because my wife chose someone else, I would have laughed. Not because I thought we were perfect, but because I trusted her. Completely. Blindly. Losing that trust hurt more than losing the relationship. Here's what I learned, and this is the part one wish someone had drilled into my head earlier. Love should not make you feel small. Honesty shouldn't have to be negotiated. And if someone keeps showing you who they are, believe them, even when it ruins the story you wanted. If you're reading this and you're in that awful in-between space, where you know something's wrong but you're scared to confirm it, I get it. Your brain will try to protect you with denial. Your heart will beg you to stay because starting over feels impossible. It isn't. It's painful. It's lonely. It will wreck you for a while. But staying somewhere you're disrespected will hollow you out in ways that take much longer to repair. Walking away didn't make me stronger overnight. It just stopped the damage. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do. If you're going through something similar, trust your gut, protect your dignity, and don't confuse history with obligation. You deserve a partner who chooses you, when it's easy and when it's hard.